what is justification?
It's basically the reasons that you have and can show for holding a particular position, basically.
Exactly. So, I mean, who does that actually apply to?
It depends on the context, but if you're going to go with, say, a certain belief, then the justification is mainly one for the individual in regards to they sort of owe themselves a duty to be rational, at least if they want to call themselves rational. So the justification is to meet that duty.
And would you say that applies to any position?
It depends, but yeah, like propositional attitudes, yeah.
And obviously, that general justification is more to ourselves than to anyone else.
Yeah, except if you're making an outright claim, like, you're making an actual existential claim, then you sort of have a duty to justify it externally to other people as well, at least if you want to convince them.
So you'd separate there someone making an actual claim that something is true versus, well, yeah, I believe it's true, or no, I don't believe that is true.
Yeah. And even not believing something requires a form of justification. At least if you want to say that it's rational, you have to show that it's rational. But
So
not believing somebody is, it's taking a position on what they've just described to you. So if you're going to say that that position is false or that there's insufficient evidence, you must be able to justify that sort of thing.
yeah, and as you said, that general justification is more for yourself. You've just frozen, so whilst you're frozen, I'm going to catch up with the chat. Greg says, I actually wrote down my justifications. It was based on something J. Ash Bowie posted several years ago. Should I post it here? I'm happy to read your justifications. That sounds pretty cool. LB, nice to see you in the chat as well. Good to have you here. So yes, you were talking about the justifications to make your position rational. We don't necessarily owe them to anyone else unless we're making a claim, or perhaps we're in a formal debate, or we are in court. So we don't necessarily have to justify our position to anyone else unless we are asserting, no, it's definitely true, sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, in a general conversation as well, in just like a general everyday dialogue, if you're having a two-way discussion with something and you say something about their position, you might not have a duty to say it, but it would be more polite to actually give your justifications in those kind of situations as well.
Yeah, exactly. But we wouldn't necessarily apply it to every single thing someone says. So if I was to say, what did you do at the weekend? And you were to go, oh, I went down the beach. I wouldn't go, prove it.
No, no.
I mean, it's ridiculous. In general conversation, you could justify it. You might even have a picture, you might have a GPS tag, but in general conversation, you wouldn't necessarily justify it. But you could easily justify it to yourself anyway, because you know what you did at the weekend.
Yeah.
And you probably went with Emma, and she knows what you did, and you know, yeah,
Yeah. And it's sort of going back to your thing, other things need justification? Think of something like that, but like you step outside and it's raining and you feel the rain, you can justify the idea that it's raining just from being there. You don't necessarily have justifications beyond that.
yeah, that makes sense. I mean, that's something sensory. Um, so I suppose this comes on to we've just covered off some of the general misunderstandings about the burden of proof in that regard. Is that some people say anytime someone holds a belief, they have a burden to prove it to someone else.
Yeah, no, that's definitely not the case. Um, if you want to tell somebody else that they should believe that too, then you've got to kind of justify it.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So if you're in a conversation where you might have some between a theist and an atheist, for example, whatever definition of atheist they're using, um, the theist is saying, no, it's definitely true, or you should believe this because otherwise you'll go to hell. They have obviously that burden. But the atheist, in the same regard, go, well, I don't believe you. They still have a justification to say, well, these are my reasons why I don't accept what you are saying. It's not simply no evidence, not enough evidence, I don't accept it, it's bullshit. There is a little bit more involved in them justifying why they don't believe or actively disbelieve in the position. Obviously, I don't want to get into a another conversation right now about the definition of atheism. That one goes on far too long, and we've got a couple of videos about that anyway, so we can skirt around that.